so here we go. So now our Polish is, it's not really at room temperature, but it's been out now for a couple hours, and it's more bubbly, and I've pre-measured all of my ingredients and laid them out. So this is my Polish. So now it's been sitting out on the counter now for about 2 hours. And my kitchen is cold. My kitchen is probably only 55 degrees. But there's a lot more bubbly action going on here, even than this morning from when I took it inside from outside on the porch where it was living. So this is what we're going to use. I have 31 ounces of flour. So I have about 6.5 cups of flour, mixed white and whole wheat. And I may use all of this. I might not, because that's like the top amount of flour that I might need. But I do have a big bucket next to me for flouring the surface and flouring my hands. I have half a teaspoon of yeast, and I have 1 tablespoon of salt. Okay? And then I have 2.5 cups of flour. And you'll see my flour is, I'm sorry, not flour, water. My water is very warm. It's 93 degrees. And that's because my Polish is cold. So if I take out my kitchen is cold, so that's thing number 1. And then you see my Polish is going to drop in temperature rapidly. So what I really want is I want as close to 80 degrees as possible. So if I add all these pieces together, there's a formula. But see, my Polish is really only, it's probably going to go down all the way to 55 because that's what my kitchen is. So the extra warm water and the cold Polish and the cold kitchen are going to let me bring this to a nice even temperature. So, hey Heather, here we go. So I'm going to give the camera to my camera girl over here so that I can use my hands. And that way I don't know exactly what she's going to film. But I'm going to work and talk at the same time. So here she is. Ah, nope. There she is. She's famous. All right. There you go. So try to keep it steady. Don't move it around. So my handy dandy wooden spoon. Now when I mix it up, it's very bubbly and very loose, right? And if I smell it, I can smell the yeast, and that's like super fluffy, okay? So I'm going to give it a little bit of yeast, a little bit of water, and we're going to break up that so it's not floppy. Break that in, put all the water in. I'm going to add some of the flour. Now because my stuff is measured already, I don't really have to like keep count, right? Because I did that work ahead of time. Now if it was a super humid day in the summer, I might need more flour. If I have super fresh flour that's really absorbent, I might not need quite as much. Fresh flour absorbs liquid way better than old flour. So, just like this. It's very scientific. Not really, but it's fun. Once you can do this recipe, you can put it up here. Once you can do this recipe, you can add all kinds of things to it. If you like sun-dried tomatoes and basil, you could chop up sun-dried tomatoes and basil. You could take any herbs from your summer garden and put them in. You could add, my favorite is raisins and toasted sesame seeds with a little bit of either wheat germ, or if you have fresh ground whole wheat flour, you add more of the whole wheat flour to it, and it tastes like Raisin Bran. You could add my favorite, and I usually put it in sourdough, but you can do it in a bread like this. is dried cherries and pecans or almonds. Oh, not almonds, walnuts. Pecans or walnuts. Usually I put that in a sourdough, which is a little different. But this bread makes a really crunchy, like eat it with soup, open-faced. It's not soft white sandwich bread. This is country bread. It's going to have a rustic crust. It's going to have lots of bubbles. It's not a peanut butter and jelly bread. There we go. So now we're starting to look like this. And I love this wooden spoon. This was made by a craftsman. He's from here in the Pioneer Valley. Can't remember his name, but he sells all kinds of wooden spoons at markets and fairs, and it just fits so nice. So it's kind of my favorite. And so for all my students who made spoons this year with me, make sure you use the spoons that you made for all the goodness. There we go. So that's probably the last of what's gonna go in this bowl. And then we're gonna turn it out on my counter. Oops. I make a royal mess when I do this. This is not a clean activity.
You might want a bigger bowl next time.
Yeah. I do usually mix in that green, in that yellow bowl, but for filming, I wanted to make sure. Are there any questions, Maureen? Are people popping up questions?
No questions so far. They
Okay.
just say wave.
They just, well, that just means they're watching. So I know Heather Margaret was on.
And Mrs. Therian is on now.
Oh, okay. And so one of the boys is in charge of making the today. Jacob. Jay wanted to do it. So there we go. You will get very strong arms. Now,
Yes.
up in my face. If you wanted to use a mixer, you could do this in like a KitchenAid mixer. The first part, I would use just the regular, what do you call it?
Paddle?
Paddle, thank you. But once it gets to this stage, it's hard to mix, right? It's kind of thick. If you keep it in that paddle, your machine's not going to like it. You can switch to a bread hook and put the rest of the flour in. And when it starts to come off the sides and the dough hook is kind of doing the work, it'll probably take 10 minutes or so of the machine doing that work. That's a totally useful thing. I would say after you do that to turn it out on the surface and use your hands anyway, because it lets you feel how the dough is acting. Okay, there we go. So now I'm gonna flour my hands really well.
So it doesn't stick.
Yeah, don't worry, they're clean. I've washed them
Yes.
8 million times. Okay, thank
There
you.
you
And we're gonna go like this. Now you'll see it's still very loose. You could add more flour in the bowl before you turn it out, but because I have a bench knife, this is how I do it. Get as much of this out of there as I can. Okay. There we go. So this is a fun part of self-sufficiency. Can you take that to the sink? Is that if you have the raw ingredients, simple flour, water, yeast, you can feed you and your family. And even if you didn't have yeast, say you only had a little bit, if you made one of these things, and before you turned it into its last loaf, if you just added, cut off a little piece of it, add some water and some salt, add some water and some flour, and stuck it in a jar on your counter, you could make your own sourdough. Like, it could become sourdough. So right now, this is really super soft. No, this is just a long poolish. But I'm talking, if people are stuck at home, right? They don't have access to their regular bakery or the regular whatever, and they're trying to make do. If you have flour and a little bit of salt and a little bit of water, if you were to take this and cut off this much, put it in a jar with some water till it looked like pancake batter with some more flour, stick it in the corner every couple of days, you could make bread. That's what pioneers did for forever. They didn't have supermarkets. They had you know, a bag of flour in the corner. If you wanted to take this and make it into pizza crust, you could add a little oil. If you wanted to, or any kind of Italian sort of bread would have a little olive oil in it. So focaccia or pizza crust. The French tend to not put any fats in their breads, which means they don't hold very long. Like, they're only good for a day or two before you have to make them again. You can put them in the freezer. So if you're not going to eat the whole thing, cut it in half, wrap it in plastic wrap, and put the part you're not going to eat in the freezer. And it will stay longer that way because there are no preservatives in it. So now my dough is less sticky. See? So my bench knife really helps it to... Now there's stuff stuck to my hands, but that's okay because that's going to stay there. And now comes the work. So now we take our hands like this. My feet are shoulder width apart. My counter is nice and low for just this reason. If you're at a high counter or you're the shorter variety,
You can get a step stool.
you can stand on a step stool. If you're blessed with long legs, then just stride right up to your countertop and work away. Here's the therapeutic part of making bread. Because push, pull, fold, fold, push, pull, turn. Boop. And we just do this over and over and over again. And you'll...
Yeah, that was earlier.
Right, and so people's questions will pop up. So, Isabel, can you scoop just a little bit? Whoop.
Yes.
A little bit more flour for me into there. And so sometimes you do need a little more flour for your surface so it doesn't. But right now, see how it's kind of sticky? This is not ready. See how it's kind of like webby and broken. That saying of your bread should be as smooth as a baby's bottom really is true. It should be, I know. It's on order. It should arrive when the bread arrives. That should be good. That should be good. Let's go. Alright. There we go. And then, just go like this, over and over. And what happened? It'll stop soaking up flour. It'll stop sticking to my hands. Okay. So this is great aggression therapy.
Yes.
This is almost as good as watching Steel Magnolias when you're just having one of those days. Okay, this will give you a great upper body workout.
Yes.
You can go like this.
Can I eat it?
Bread dough is very forgiving. Are your hands clean?
Yes, I just washed them.
Okay. Yes.
Flour your hands.
Flour your hands a little bit. I'm going to step out and let Isabel. So Isabel's 11. She is quite accomplished.
12.
Almost. Oh my goodness. Almost 12. She's quite accomplished.
I'm not
She
going to
can do
say
this.
my age.
Yeah, you're sold. She'll make me cry.
Yeah.
Okay. So like this. There you go. I'm going to wash my hands. Okay.
It's
So what's your favorite kind of bread, Isabel?
I don't know.
Okay, use the knife, use the bench knife to scrape. There you go.
Sticky. Enough sticky bread dough.
Okay, so here, not too much. Okay. Now you don't have to thin it out. It should be like, it's like giving a massage. Right? It's like giving a massage. Roll and smush it in, roll and smush it in, roll and smush it in, roll and smush it in. Turn it. Fold it over. Roll and smush it in. Roll and smush it in. There you go. That's right. And the more the gluten gets strong, the more it develops, the harder it gets to do. That's why we kind of toss it on the countertop and bang it. And it kind of
That's
releases some of the tension. Okay. Okay. Oh, so Heather's asking the dough hook or the 3-hole. To start, we would use the 3-hole while it was still loose. And then once it starts to stick together, switch it for the dough hook and let the dough hook do the heavy work.
Do you want to?
No, because I'm going to go back into the thing in a minute. Okay. So here we go. So now, don't use that flour. Just leave it there. Because I'm going to use this bowl to rise the dough in. So now it's ready. Now, see, as you push it, it doesn't stick back together like it's keeping its shape. So we're going to keep that flour over there. We're going to use that later. Oh, see, now it's super smooth. Like, now my hands are clean. I took all of the ick off. And when I do this, it doesn't stick. That's how I know it's ready. Okay?
Because you don't even need to flour.
Because I don't even need to flour my hands. Now later, I might put a little olive oil on my hands. So it so it doesn't stick, and so I don't add more flour to the dough.
Yep.
So now that I have it like this, nice and smooth, right? It's nice and tight. I'm going to put it in its bowl like this. Okay? And I'm going to put a lid on it, and I'm going to let it sit and rise in a moderately warm place. So for me, that's right near my...
Oven?
No, not near the oven. So if you put it by the oven, it's too hot. In our house, it means it goes by the radiator on the floor with a cover on it, because the heat from the radiator pipes come up from the floor. So that's, in my house, that's its warm spot. If you have a warm kitchen or a radiator with a top, you could go ahead and put it there. No place warmer than 80 degrees. Like, someplace comfortable. You can cover it with a lid. You can cover it with plastic wrap. You can cover it with a damp towel. You just don't want it to dry out. So plastic wrap works well as long as you give it enough room to puff up. Should it be a little sticky? It can be. It shouldn't be like... it shouldn't be sticking to your hands the whole time. But a little tacky is fine. You'll know it's ready when it stops. Like, you don't want too much flour. As you're kneading it on the board, it will stick less and it'll be smooth, almost like a baby that just came out of the bathtub. So they're kind of wet and damp. And then you're going to put it in its bowl and you're going to let it rise. And now it says 2 hours, but it's not necessarily 2 hours. It's until it's double the size that it is now. So look at it in its bowl, and depending on the temperature of your house, depending on how vigorous your yeast is, it should be double what it is now. It won't be like super puffy. You don't want it super, super puffy. But double what it is right now. And then we're going to knead it again and let it rest, and then we're going to make loaves. So I'm going to put this away for the next 2 hours or so, and then come back to it. Clean up my mess, and then come back. Okay? All right. Enjoy the rest of your morning. I think it's almost time. My alarm is ringing. So it shouldn't be too super sticky, but a little bit tacky is okay. All right. I love you all. I will see you later.